Here are 5 things you just need to get used to as a nonprofit founder. Let's get into it. Hey y'all, this is Tiffany with Boss on a Budget. So I help people start their nonprofits and raise money for their new nonprofits. I have a private community where I provide encouragement and accountability for nonprofit founders. If you need a community like that, go ahead and say in the comments, I want to join, and I will send you the link to sign up. So if you really want to know what it's like to be a founder, if you want to know what it takes and the kind of things you have to embrace, that's what I'm going to be talking about in this video today. I really want you to watch this whole video because number 4 and number 5 are important. It's really important that you get these 2 concepts as you approach your startup journey. Number 1 may sound odd, but stay with me. It's the fact that you have to repeat yourself. So when I say repeat yourself, it means that there are certain messages that you're going to have to say over and over and over again, because there are always opportunities to meet somebody new who does not know about the work you're doing and who does not know your organization. Don't make the mistake of assuming that just because you have shared the information and it feels natural and normal to you, that everybody understands what you're saying and everyone knows your history. Because sometimes when you've paid your dues and you've done a lot of things and you've proven yourself, you may get into a different space where nobody has any knowledge of that. Nobody has any awareness of that. And you still have to repeat yourself. You still have to tell your story. You have to still remind people of why you're here. And that can feel so frustrating. But I just want to warn you and let you know that's what it is. You're going to have to say things over and over again. I'm going to give you some examples. So with your fundraising appeals, some people think there's like this magic to writing fundraising letters where you have to say something perfect or feel like you have to do something creative every time you ask for a donation. But a lot of times with fundraising, it just needs to be simple, it needs to be clear, and it needs to be compelling. And it doesn't have to be complicated. A lot of the things that are too complicated, people don't understand and people don't support because they don't understand it. So you may find yourself saying the same verbiage over and over again. Thank you for all you do. You made this possible. With your help, we can make sure that this doesn't happen for this community. And it can feel dry and it can feel stale. You have to say it over and over again. And those words and phrases I use over and over again when I teach people about writing fundraising appeals and thank you letters. But I'm saying it because it works. And it's the simple language, it's the clear language that gets to people, that gets to the heart of people. And so if that's what works for people, that's something you have to do and say over and over again. So another thing may be around describing your mission, describing what you do. Every time you show up somewhere, there's a potential to meet somebody new. So you should be preparing not necessarily an elevator speech, but what's your spiel? What's the thing that you say when you introduce yourself? Who you are, what your mission is, and the powerful work that you do and who you're impacting, right? You want to have all of that in 2-3 sentences. So every time you show up in a space, you're just used to saying stuff like that. Well, you're going to get tired of saying that. You're going to get tired of hearing yourself say that over and over again. But it's so important because you never know who's listening and you never know who's watching. And the information that they hear from you can be what they need to hear in that moment to make a connection for you or to decide to support you. And here's one more thing I'll say about repeating yourself. The one thing you have to realize, especially when it comes to fundraising, is most times the first time you reach out to somebody, or the first time you have a touch point with somebody, or you interact with somebody, or they like interact with your website or interact with your social media page, it's very rare that the first time they do that they're going to be converted into a donor or a supporter. It's rare that someone can just hit your page and just be like, oh yeah, I want to give. Yeah, it does happen. But for most people, especially if they want to develop relationship with your organization, they're going to check you out. They're going to hear multiple things from you. And it just takes time. So you have to do multiple touch points, multiple messages, emails and DMs and social media posts and website updates and presentations in your community. You got to do all of that. And sometimes it takes the combination of doing all those things to convince even one person to give. So I don't want you to get discouraged and feel like you keep saying the same thing and nobody's listening. No, that's not true, right? You got to give people time to make the decision that's right for them. And just because you say something or you want them to do something doesn't mean they will or doesn't mean they should. What I want you to focus on is your messaging, making sure that messaging is tight, making sure you're comfortable saying what you have to say, and getting clear on your message and repeating it over and over and over again. The second thing is learning how to prioritize your nonprofit versus everything else you have going on. This is something I'm never going to back away from when I say this. Never sacrifice yourself for your mission. I know for a lot of you, you feel like your nonprofit is a calling, right? I know for a lot of you, your nonprofit is just fulfilling a purpose in your life. But I would venture to say, and just stay with me on this one, that it's not necessarily the nonprofit that's the calling. It's the impacting and helping other people. And the vehicle may be at the time a nonprofit. But for most of you, if you have a purpose and a calling to help a certain kind of person or a certain community, you probably could do that without a nonprofit structure or with a nonprofit structure. So what happens when you start a nonprofit is you have to become so invested in the success of the structure, because the structure gives you the ability to get funding and to get people to be able to scale and grow bigger, right? So you have to invest a lot of time in building the structure of the organization. And some of your effort is not going to be with direct mission work. Quite a bit of it is that other stuff that you don't see behind the scenes, developing relationships with people, doing presentations, asking for money, managing a board, dealing with staff, dealing with insurance and, bylaws and policies and things like that. You have to get that stuff right in order for your programs to run well and for you to carry out your mission. You need both of those. And I'm just going to be real, that's overwhelming. It's overwhelming for an established organization that has staff. So it's absolutely overwhelming for somebody who's new. You're a founder and you're doing pretty much everything yourself. And you have little support from your board, which is most of y'all. So let's just be clear, that's overwhelming, but that's the journey. So you're going to come to a place where you're going to have to make decisions about working on your nonprofit versus spending time with your family versus spending time with your significant other versus working on your job or working your business. And you got to be clear what the boundaries are with that. And as much as I encourage people about starting their nonprofits, I don't believe that it's the nonprofit or else. I believe you have to take care of yourself. And so when you find that it's bleeding into your relationships and it's causing harm in other areas of your life, you got to assess that. You have to assess what matters the most. And sometimes it's not the nonprofit, but a lot of times people get the organization or the structure mixed up with the mission and the purpose and the calling, right? You have to work on the organization when you start a nonprofit, but you can fulfill your calling and your purpose whether you have a nonprofit or not. Now, I know that may be controversial for some of y'all, and it may go over some people's heads, but just know that if you find yourself at a crossroads and you're like, man, I'm working so hard on this nonprofit, but my family needs me or my children need me. If it was me, I would pick my family and my children. Because at the end of the day, your nonprofit is there for the community. It's not your personal nonprofit. You don't own it. Right? And so it's important that you set the precedent and you allow it to create and do the things it needs to do to support the community. But in the end, it's not yours, And you got to invest in what's yours as well. You got to invest in the things that you own. Invest in the things that matter to you as well. So just remember to set clear boundaries when you are starting a nonprofit. The third thing you got to get comfortable with is using technology. So here's the thing. You can be successful, dare I say this, you can be successful raising money, going old school, not worrying about social media and using word of mouth strategies to raise money. You absolutely can. It's a little harder, and I don't know why you would want to do that, but I'm not saying you absolutely have to be on social media, because there are nonprofits out here thriving who don't have a great social media presence. But at some point, especially if you're new and you're small, it helps level the playing field when you use social media, when you use technology. You want to know why? Because it makes things efficient. because it streamlines processes for you. Sometimes it eliminates work for you. And the more you can think about streamlining and just being more effective and efficient at the work you do, the more successful you'll be, especially when it comes to doing communications and marketing. There are so many tools out here to help with nonprofit marketing and getting your name out there that there's no reason why you shouldn't be using those tools, especially the ones that are free. So in this video above, I'm linking a video that I did talking about some free tools for nonprofits. And I also did a video on should your nonprofit have a website. So I'm linking that video above as well so you can check out and get more information about that. But don't be afraid of technology. Don't shy away from using it, and try not to speak over yourself. I'm not good at that. I'm not good at that, because then you'll never be good at it. At this point, things are more simple than they used to be. So the learning curve is not as great for a lot of this technology. And if you can't grasp it, if it's just not for you, then tap into the people where that is their strength, where they do know how to do things on technology, like doing email marketing, like posting for social media, like creating graphics, like setting up your website, like designing your business card, things like that. Those things are important. So you can't forsake that or gloss it over. You should be using technology to raise money. You should be having online forms and collecting money through your donation platform. You can connect to PayPal and Venmo through certain donation platforms. You absolutely should be exploring that and using that, because if you don't, you're losing out on some opportunities to make money, but also to meet new people. The greatest thing about technology is that it connects people across the world, and there are connections you can make without ever leaving your house. That's unlike anything we've ever had in history before, so you should be taking advantage of that. Number 4 is always having an attitude of reflection. I'll say reflection and evaluation. Here's some things you got to understand about startup. And this is for-profit or nonprofit. You're going to fail. You're going to fail publicly. You're going to bomb. It's almost like a rite of passage. Very rare does somebody out the gate just hit all the marks and do everything well. And even for those people who are successful early on, there's still growing pains. There's still things you have to learn. There's still some things that you'll make mistakes on that you just have to grow from. But if you don't have the attitude of reflection, if you don't have the attitude where you're okay with embracing the failure, but leaning into it. So when I say leaning into it, I mean understanding why something didn't work well, understanding what could be done better, testing it, tweaking it to see what can be done again, reflecting on how you may be impacting the success of something. Is there something you could have done better? Is there a way you could have messaged or communicated something better? Is it something you need more from someone else that you're not getting, that you need to be able to articulate to them so they can show up in a better way? I'm going to be giving you some concrete examples. One of the biggest areas of reflection is probably around your board. And I want you to think about when you get frustrated with your board, when they aren't doing enough, I want you to reflect on, what do they understand about their role? Right? What are the things they may be confused about? What are the things that they're not saying that may be impacting their effectiveness in their role? Because most issues, especially with startup boards that I've seen, is that people have no clue what it's like to be a board member and what's expected of them. So you're in your bubble and you're like, man, these people are not doing what I need them to do. And they're waiting for you to tell them what to do. And even when you tell them what to do, because they're not used to this nonprofit space, they're like, well, I didn't know what to do, so I didn't do anything. It's just a weird dynamic. So I want you to, instead of getting angry and frustrated, I want you to start reflecting on what they may need to know more about. I also want you to get used to asking yourself questions, right? And this is not just with the board, just with everything. Ask yourself questions when it comes to your services. What are the services that your clients or participants need? What are they asking for? What's missing in our community that we can fill the gap? What is a voice or an opinion or perspective that we can share to help us stand out? What is unique about us? Do a lot of reflection and understanding and observation about where you are so you can evaluate and assess about how you want to move and what plans you want to make. Honestly, I'm just saying be strategic. And before you can put a strategy in place, it's got to come from a place of information. So that reflection is what gives you the information, gives you the data to understand what to do next or how to move. So embrace an attitude of reflection and have that culture within your whole organization. Be curious about the work that you're doing, especially when you're new, because you can be nimble, you can change, you can shift to what makes the most sense in the season of your nonprofit. So just embrace that culture of reflection. Number 5, release the hold that money has on you. This is a tough conversation because people have so many hangups about money, whether they realize it or not. And those hangups can really hinder you when it's time to ask for money. And not even when it's time to ask for money. When you need to make certain moves and you don't have enough money, that can also impact how you move and the decisions you make. So there are a couple of beliefs around money that I just need you to get used to saying to yourself and get used to believing. That someone who has more money than you does not mean they have any power over you or they're better or smarter than you. You have to believe that. Some people would beg to differ. Some people would push back on that. But you have to believe that just because someone else has money or has access to more money doesn't make them better than you. Because if you do believe that, then you're always coming from a place of help me. You're from a place of deficiency when that's not the point of you doing your work. The point of you doing your work is to invite people to partner with you. And I don't know about you, but I don't want to partner with somebody who I feel inferior to, right? That's not a partnership. That doesn't feel good, right? A person who has access to money can help and provide value in a bunch of different ways, but you also provide value in a bunch of different ways. You're doing the work. So they're bringing the money to the table, but you're actually doing the work and you're on the front lines getting things done. They both hold value and one isn't necessarily better than the other. So that's one thing I want you to understand, that money does not make a person better or smarter than you. The second thing is money is a tool. It's a tool to get what you need done. But if you put so much faith in money, when you don't have it, it's a devastating feeling. And when you don't have it, especially when you are running a business, it causes you to make decisions that you wouldn't normally make if you felt like you had the space to breathe and make good decisions. So when you're strapped for money, you may do certain things or make certain decisions to make quick money that if you had enough money, you wouldn't even think about doing that, right? So sometimes with nonprofits, because they're strapped for money, they may go after a grant or a source of money that doesn't fit their mission or doesn't maybe fit their values all the way. But because they need the money, they go after it. And that's just a sucky place to be in. That is the reality. I know that happens all the time in business and for nonprofits, but that's why you just kind of have to release the hold that money has on you, for you feeling like, oh, because I don't have it, I have to move in this way. I prefer, and I'm still in a work in progress in that, let me just be honest, but I prefer to look at money as a tool and understand that money comes and money goes. That as easily as money goes, the money can come. And if I stop holding and stressing so much about what I don't have or what I do have, then I'm able to make better and clearer decisions. So I want you to release the hold that any mindsets or fears about money has on you, so you can make better decisions to move forward your nonprofit, to raise money, and to complete your mission. I hope that information was helpful. If you need help with your nonprofit, you can visit me at bossonabudget.com. Also, please comment below your experience as a nonprofit founder so you can encourage other people and share your journey with others. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.